Well, again, this is Bob Buckley at True 32 Corporation, and we're going to start another of the KCD tutorials. This one's going to deal with what I'm referring to as quick start jobs. I've created a series of these, and using numbers puts them at the top of the list. If your jobs are named like mine, typically with either the builder's name or the homeowner's name starting, that keeps them at the top of the list if you're not using numbers to number them yourself. But they'll all start within 0, 8, 0, 9, or 10 for 8-foot ceiling, 9-foot ceiling, or 10-foot ceiling. So they'll be fairly easy to find, probably stay grouped together for the most part. And any of the True 32 current clients or anyone who has the True 32 library has access to these jobs through a shared folder in Dropbox. I just share that folder with folks. But to give you a feel for what these mean, 08 ceiling, not to ceiling staggered means that we've got an 8-foot ceiling. We're not taking the cabinets to the ceiling, but we're staggering the height. 8-foot ceiling, not to ceiling, just means we have an 8-foot ceiling and we're not going to the ceiling, so we're basically going with a 2158 or 7-foot cabinet height. 8-foot ceiling to ceiling means we have an 8-foot ceiling and we're running the cabinets to the ceiling. And that's how that works with all of these. The only exception, you see here that there's 3 for the 8-foot ceilings and 3 for the 9-foot ceiling, but there's 4 for the 10-foot ceiling because we have also a stacked group where we can actually stack one cabinet on top of the other to create a double cabinet. In the case where we're putting glass doors at the top, it's sometimes easier to do 2 cabinets than one with fixed shelf, although we could do either one. Typically, if I'm going to cabinets to the ceiling on a 10-foot ceiling, I typically want to use plywood interiors for the weight of them if I'm not going to stack them, if I'm going to do a fixed shelf. If I'm doing a melamine interior, then I definitely want to stack them just because of the weight. So one cost typically offsets the other. If someone doesn't want to pay for plywood interiors, they're probably going to pay about the same price if they choose not to pay for plywood interiors and use melamine interiors. We're going to end up having a higher cost because we're stacking the cabinets. We have more cabinets to deal with. So, but these are the quick start jobs, and we're just going to use the 10-foot, not to the ceiling, not to the ceiling, but staggered as our first illustration. So this is a 10-foot ceiling. We're not going to the ceiling, and we're going to stagger the heights to illustrate how flat frieze works and how the staggered heights in alternate group works. And I'm just going to try to use the same illustration each time for continuity. So I'm just going to draw a wall about 3,200 millimeters long. And on this wall, I'm going to start with a tall cabinet. So we'll just start with an oven cabinet, which can also show us how these upper and lowers work. So let's say we're going to use let's use the micro oven over drawer. So this actually has a rail between them. Cabinet, and I'm going to start with my applied end. So I'm going to use, since that's an oven cabinet, I'm not going to go to the floor. So I'm going to use my 3-panel applied end, and I'm going to hold it off that left wall. This is telling me left position, so I'm going to hold it off that left wall 128 millimeters and say OK. And then I'm going to place my lower oven unit, this unit here, right of unit 1, and I'm going to place my upper oven unit. And again, this is sized appropriately based off of the startup standards, and I'm going to say that it's centered on. It's already defaulted to next to 2, so if I say center on, I don't have to change anything else as opposed to right of 1. And now I'm just going to fix the drawer that's showing a drawer front with cut down rails. I want a door anytime I do a tall cabinet like that. And just as soon as I drop a cabinet, I usually do the hardware to make sure I'm getting my hinging and making sure I'm getting everything like I want it. And don't forget those things. Now I'm going to zoom in. Well, let me go ahead and put the right side on this. So let's say this one's going to be a slab end, tall applied right, and this is going to be right of 3. And I'm going to zoom in now and show you basically what's happening here. We have an end panel that's sticking up past the top of the cabinet, and that's exactly 19 millimeters because that's what our startup standard says, as is this one. And we see a line on the crown mold because this end panel is 20 millimeters projected past the front of the box, and this crown mold is basically just flush with the front of the box. So that's why there's a line there. But we have an option, and this option for this flat frieze is based off of our shop standards we looked at earlier. These line 3 and 4 for this flat frieze. So we want a flat frieze height of 19, and that's what's adding the 19 millimeters to the end panels. And then we want a depth of 108. So we'll see when we choose this tall frieze flat, it's going to be in the right position. It's going to be the right depth off the wall because of all those startup standards. We don't have to change anything. All we've got to do for this unit is tell it that it is 762 millimeters wide and that it is centered on unit number 3. Oh, I got a filler. I'm sorry. I clicked on the wrong unit. I want a flat frieze right here. 762 millimeters wide. We see that this thing is 19 millimeters tall. We see that the depth is 108 millimeters, and it's from the wall of 520, which is the 608 or 628 minus the 108, and then the floor to the top of the filler is our cabinet height, 2542 plus the 19. So all the math has been done for us. We don't have to do any hitting the calculator or any adds or subtracts in these fields. All I've done is enter the width of that cabinet, and then I can say left of. It's already on next to 4, so I can just say left of 4 and say OK. And now we see that the crown mold is now right for this unit, and we see the flat frieze on there and in the right position, filling in that area right there. Running in panel to end panel. Makes it really easy to cut too, because all your cuts are straight. They're either from a wall to an end panel, or from a wall to a wall, or from an end panel to an end panel. It's just always simple and easy cuts. And so that's how the flat frieze works. If we look at this cabinet from overhead and zoom in on that, we see here that it's actually positioned flush to the front of the end panel and comes back 108 millimeters. So now, while we're looking at that, the primary objective of this video was to show that we have a quick start job that's actually setting the heights and depths and all of that for us for the startup standards, but also illustrating how this flat frieze works, and then we're also going to look at how the frieze works as well in another video. But also we want to look at how this alternate group works, this top cabinet's alternate group. So let's go ahead and put a regular top cabinet next to that oven cabinet. Let's say top cabinet, and let's say it's 762 millimeters wide, and it's right of that applied in 4. And while we're in this group, we want to go ahead and get our light rail and frieze because they're at the proper depth and height. All of the other settings are appropriate for this. So we want to grab our light rail and say that it is 762 centered on 6. And then we want to go ahead and get our flat frieze for this cabinet. Say that it's 762, and it's also centered on 7, 6 or 7, either one. And we see that pop in there and fill that gap. And now when we go to this alternate group, top cabinet's alternate, we're going to go deeper and taller cabinet. So when you have staggered cabinets, you just pop in here when you need the cabinets to be deeper and taller. And the defaults are always going to cover you as far as your crown mold. If you're using the True 32 vintage crown, you may have to edit those some to work with other crown molds. So we want to come in here and we want to say we want to have a top applied left plus light rail, and it is right of 8 is fine. It could be right of 8, 6, or 7, any of those. And if we look at it overhead, we see that that end panel is not only taller, but it's deeper as well. So it's deep. It's set to whatever the startup standard was, which I believe was 394 plus the 20 millimeters. Then let's go ahead and put a cabinet there. And we'll just say this one is 762 as well, and it is right of 9. And then we'll grab our applied in right, and we'll tell it this one is raised panel, and it's right of 10. Then we'll get our flat frieze. Say it's 762, the width of the cabinet, left of 11. And then we want our light rail, also 762, and centered on 12 or 10, either one. Go ahead and put our hinging in here. Then when we look at this overhead, we see that this cabinet is deeper, and we see the flat frieze on each of these two cabinets. And then we look at it head on, we see that this is also taller. So that's what the quick start jobs do, is they basically have preset shop standards here based on whatever that configuration is. Now, for this particular job, I just kind of worked through here, but the first thing you want to do when you start a job using a quick start job is go save as and name it something else. I'm not going to save this, so it's alright that I've left that name there because I'm just going to go out of it and not save it. But ideally, to make certain that you don't overwrite your quick start jobs, number one, save the initial job, or either keep your shared folder and keep your copies in your shared folder. Don't when I share the folder with you, you can keep that indefinitely, and you just grab it again if you accidentally overwrite it. But you could also keep a backup copy in another folder just in case. But if you just get in the habit, as soon as you get the job started, open it up, just go ahead and do save as and save it as whatever the appropriate job name is. You won't have to worry about overwriting it either. But that's how these quick start jobs work, and this tutorial dealt with flat frieze. The next tutorial will deal with vertical frieze. Basically very similar to this, but we'll be going to a ceiling to use vertical frieze. So hopefully that was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you on another video. Thanks.